Hello, my name is Panashe Chigumadzi. I am the editor and founder of Vanguard Magazine, based in South Africa. I am Zimbabwean born and still identify as Zimbabwean. And the answer to the question about Afropolitanism is that I am ambivalent about the term. On one hand, I celebrate and welcome this culture that celebrates a common history of Africans on the continent, in the diaspora, whether recently immigrated or having been there because of the Atlantic slave trade. On the other hand, I am wary of the fact that, or rather, my biggest concern is about which voices are privileged in these images and conversations about this global African culture. So one, I think Afropolitanism, as defined by Haile Selassie, tends to be in its truest form, if I can call it that, is one that tends to privilege those kind of Africans who are well educated, well traveled, and can move in between continents and have that sort of very global view of an African culture. And those voices tend to be dominating, and also that also means that you have a little bit more of a middle class perspective. Which is important because I think on one hand we often have a little bit too much of purely Africa as poverty, and we don't get to hear of middle class experiences in Africa. But I think as we move on and create this new image, that also can tend to distort what it is part of the African experience or global African experience. And the other is that the diasporan experience also tends to dominate what we come to know as global African culture. So for example, we look at some of the biggest names in African or biggest books in African literature over the last 2 years. So it's your We Need New Names, Americana, Ghana Must Go. Those are all stories with main characters that have at some point been in Africa but then move on to be overseas, and it almost creates a sense that if I'm not in New York or London, and this is not the kind of African experience that is worthy of getting the world stage. And there's many other examples of how, an African with, who's gone to Harvard or gone to Cambridge or Oxford is often privileged over the voice of an African on the continent. So essentially those would be my main worries about Afropolitanism, just about whose voices get privileged and why. And of course it has to do with access to resources, access to the networks to amplify the voices and the projects that are being undertaken. So I think it's got the right intentions in terms of wanting to create more of a global African voice and African culture and celebrating that unity. But I think we do have to be a little bit more wary of just which voices we do privilege and what the cost is of doing so.